Okay, so I'd like to call this meeting of June the 8th, 2021 to order at 7:07 p.m. Can we please stay seated for a moment of silent reflection? Thank you very much. So we'll move on to the mayor's address. I just wanted to start by saying that municipal staff had lowered the flags as per the Prime Minister's request to lower the flags for 215 hours for the deceased children of the residential schools that were recently discovered. That will end as of midnight tonight, and the flags will be raised to full mast tomorrow morning. I'm pleased to welcome all of council. Well, we're not back in our council chambers yet, but for our next meeting, we're hopeful that we will be. With the increase in available vaccines and the increased momentum in vaccine rollouts, the targets set to have everyone vaccinated have been surpassed, and the province is now booking second vaccines for specific age and health categories. The stay-home emergency orders have been lifted, and the province has announced their cautious reopening plan. This plan will be reviewed and updated in consultation with health units across the province. Masks, hand washing, and physical distancing are required when we are in public spaces with other individuals. Staff has been extremely busy maintaining the day-to-day operations of the municipality, as well as some of the numerous new and/or ongoing projects. Just to list some of them, work on Let Cemetery Road is scheduled to begin on June 14th. Staff is preparing for our virtual Canada Day celebrations. A special thanks to Laura Griffith for coordinating our business rural rewards cards and program with Whitewater Township, Boncher Valley, Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, Brudenell, Lindock and Raglan, and Madawaska Valley. Tenders for road construction have been advertised. Work continues on our Wilkins Trail development, planning for the Deacon Boat Launch and Melissa Bishop Park upgrades and marketing continue. Shoreline road allowance sales and title transfers will be progressing with a revised process. Our new CBO has been busy with the transfer of outstanding permits, inspections, and new permits for construction. Public Works has started street sweeping, applying dust control, brushing roadsides, and pothole patching. Engineering is proceeding on our drainage concerns. Our bylaw enforcement officer is working on reviewing and updating bylaws for the enforcement department. Fire department continues training on heavy extrication, and I believe, as just announced yesterday, that there's a fire ban on throughout our whole municipality with the exception of a small 2x2x2 campfire. And I realize this is not a complete list of the work staff has been involved in, but it is an indication of the momentum that has been demonstrated to address requests from council, improve efficiencies, and maintain municipal services. In the past 3 weeks, I've attended meetings with the Renfrew County District Health Unit, County Council, and with Staff Sergeant DeSeverio of the Killaloe OPP Detachment. That is my mayor's address for tonight. I have a resolution that the June 8th, 2021 mayor's address and the county updates be accepted as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move that.
Moved by Councillor Burnt, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Call the vote. Councillor Burnt?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson? Councillor Robinson? Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
We were just waiting for your vote.
Oh, sorry. I thought. I apologize.
Councillor Reiki-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I mean, yes, that's carried. Thank you.
I think my stuff tuned out there.
I have a resolution that the May 18th, 2021 regular council meetings be accepted as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Buckwald, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Any additions, corrections, or omissions? I see none. I'll call the vote. Councillor Berndt?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reiki-Schoenfeld?
Yes. I have a question about the county council report, though. Is there time to ask a question there?
What's it in regards to? Because we do have the OPP update coming. Was there a different item you wanted to speak to?
Well, no, it was just that you said the county was going to be doing some spraying.
Right.
And then I'm just wondering, do we publish that on our website, what roads are? Do the residents know that? And the other thing too is it talked about the county is going to have a portable radar trailer. So can we suggest roads within our municipality where it might be a good idea?
We certainly can. Can we get the vote on the minutes first? And that's something that we can certainly just send a request through the staff in order to deal with those other requests.
Yes, and I voted yes for the minutes.
Okay, thank you. And I'm a yes, so that's carried, thank you. And at this point, oh yes, I forgot to mention or ask, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof?
No.
No.
I see none. Thank you. So at this point, we have with us tonight Rory Richards, who is going to present our audited financial statements. And we're always glad to have Rory here with us. Unfortunately, we can't have him in person, but we do have him on Zoom. So welcome, Rory, and we look forward to your presentation.
Hey, thank you, and good to see everyone again, or as close as we can be, I guess, to see each other. Now, does everyone have a copy of the statements or a copy in front of them, I guess, on their screen?
No.
All right, so I'll just start on page 1 of the financial statements. It's the independent auditor's report. So, yeah, there we go. So I'll just briefly go over the 4 paragraphs to highlight. The first paragraph, the opinion paragraph, just identifies entities whose financial statements have been audited. In this case, it's the corporation, North Algona Wilberforce Township, the various financial statements that have been audited, and we'll look at those later. The title of each statement, the date covered by the financial audit, which is December 31, 2020. And then it also states the auditor's conclusion. And in this case, we believe that the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects, which is a clean audit. The second paragraph, basis for opinion, states the audit was conducted under the Canadian generally accepted auditing standards, and these are the rules and standards that we follow as a profession. We are independent and have fulfilled our ethical responsibilities. We believe that the audit evidence we have obtained is sufficient and appropriate to provide the basis of our opinion. The third paragraph's manager's responsibility for the financial statements. This the audit's report describes the responsibility of those in the organization that are responsible for the preparation of financial statements. And ultimately, those charged with governance are responsible for overseeing the township's financial reporting process. And then the last paragraph's the auditor's responsibility, and it's our objective is to obtain reasonable assurance the statements are free from material misstatement. Reasonable assurance is a high level assurance, but is not a guarantee that the audit is conducted. An audit that is conducted within the Canadian generally accepted auditing standards will always detect a material misstatement. And a material misstatement is considered if individually in aggregate, it could reasonably be expected to influence the economic decisions of the users or readers of the statements. So that's a kind of a brief highlight of the auditor's report. We'll move on to the first statement, which is on page 2. This is the consolidated financial position. It's consolidated because there is a portion of the Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board that is consolidated in the statements as the ownership portion of your township. Just going to check here. I think it's 8.29 is the percentage of the townships. I'll just move down through the various items. If there's any questions, you can just stop me and we can answer them at that time. First area, financial assets. There's cash equivalents. Cash increased by $295,000 from the previous year. This is a result of a change in the decrease in taxes receivable, accounts receivable, and then accounts payable increasing. When we look at this cash flow statement later on, it provides a bit on where cash increased or decreased within the township. And of that balance, $152,000 is the Ottawa Valley Waste Management. The balance is the townships. The second item is the taxes receivable. It decreased by a substantial amount year over year by $186,000. Taxes currently are 9.8% of total taxation billed. And we do have to remember that the township collects for the county and school taxation also, and that amount is remitted to the those two other bodies. The township hasn't collected the funds from the ratepayer. So the decrease, which is very beneficial because it frees up a fair bit of cash flow for operations or investments that the township would otherwise have to cash flow from other funds. The next item, accounts receivable, decreased by $83,000. The balance consists of HST of about $121,000, which is an increase of about $20,000. And then the balance is made up of due from municipalities and other miscellaneous amounts. The Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery remained consistent, and it's about $44,000 out of that $160,000 amount. And then the last item is the investments. The Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board is $236,000. The township has a investment of just about $561,000 to make up the balance of $797,000. So total financial assets for the township at the end of the year were $4,487,000 at year end. The next items are liabilities and the accounts payable and accrued liabilities. There was an increase of about $102,850 as trade payables increased. This is mainly just due to a timing when invoices come in and when they're paid by the township. It doesn't really reflect on it, I guess, any management purposes. It's just that you can receive large invoices just prior to year end that are set up. Within that, there's the wage payable. There's also wage payables of $10,000 due to Ontario of $67,000. That's related to the OPP policing costs, and then Ottawa Valley Waste Management is $38,000 of that balance. Deferred revenue. This is revenue that the townships receive that's earmarked or for a certain purpose that hasn't been spent yet. There was a decrease of $160,000 from year over year. The main result of that is money that was brought out of OSIF. There's $140,000 removed from the OSIF deferred revenue, and then also Main Street of about $27,000. So the balance now that the township has of $146,000 consists of OSIF of just about $103,000, accessibility grant of $22,000, and cannabis funding of $55,000. And the next item, the lien note, that was related to the fire truck purchase, and it was fully paid during the fiscal year of 2020. So the township does no longer have any long-term liabilities. The next item is landfill closure and post-closure costs. This is the estimated closure and post-closure care of the solid waste landfill in future years. Majority of it is the Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board. An engineering report is done on an annual basis too, and that's why there is a change in valuation from year to year. Then the last item, the net long-term liabilities, that's also relates to debentures, loans to the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery Center. And it was, reduced by about 46,000 to 75,500. So total liabilities for the township was 718,622, resulting in net financial assets increasing by $176,000 to their $3,768,000. The next area is the non-financial assets. The non-financial assets, they're generally not used to pay off any short-term liabilities or being sold to produce cash flow. They're used more in the operations of the township. We can see tangible capital assets as the largest or the main component of the gross amount. What that is, it's the gross amount of assets, historical cost of the assets less amortization. It decreased by just 15,500, and that's the result of $1,388,000 in amortization, which reduces tangible capital assets. But the township did have additions of $1,375,000. So this year, the township did a good job of matching the amortization and purchases together. The next item is inventory of supplies. There was a change of 7,200. Inventory consists of fuel, gravel, sand, and salt. The township has year end, so it just depends on usage. The sand and salt usage was down at just due to the winter events the township had at year end. And then prepaid expenses, that relates to the Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board, and it stayed fairly consistent. So total non-financial assets remained fairly consistent at $18,727,000, resulting in a total accumulated surplus of $22,496,000. And if we look at the bottom, we can see how the accumulated surplus is comprised of. And there's equity and tangible capital assets, reserve and reserve funds, and then the unfunded landfill closure and post-closure is backed out. You can see there is a difference between the tangible capital assets and the equity and tangible capital assets. And that is just the debt amount that is removed from equity until it's paid back. So that's why there's a difference of the 75,000. If we don't have any questions, I'll maybe get you to flip over to page 15. It's the general schedule of general operations versus just the statement of financial operations. The general operations, it removes the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery, so it's just the township's operations. So it's a little, it's easier to understand, or not having the township's operations with some with other amounts included in it. The first item is the municipal taxation. There was a 4.7% increase in total taxation revenue, and that's due to the tax rate, assessment values, supplementary and write-offs amount. It was very close to the budgeted amount, just off by about $4,000. Next item is the Ontario funding and transfers. The Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund amount was $599,700, almost $600,000. There was the Safe Start grant of $112,000. OSIF grant that I mentioned prior was brought in the revenue of $337,000, Main Street grant of $27,000, and then there's some minor amounts that made up the balance. The next item is amounts from Canada, and the main amount, the gas tax that was brought in, and it was almost $89,000, and the balance was the summer employment grants that the township received. Within other revenue items, it's made up of various amounts, but the larger items were interest and penalties on tax, $68,500. This amount was lower, and I guess downside to not having as much taxes receivable, you will have less interest revenue. Waste collection of $56,000, building permits of $41,000, and investment income of $5,000. And there's also recreational revenue of just over $17,000. It's a bit lower compared to, or it is lower than budgeted, just due to tipping fees, interest on taxation, and disposal asset. So total revenue for the township was $4,549,000 for the fiscal year 2020. The next area is the expenses of the township. Under general government, there is council wages of $95,000, administration wages of $470,000, and administration materials of $263,000, and then amortization of $6,600 make up the main items of general government expenditures. Protection of the persons and properties. There's expenses on fire of just about $281,000. Policing costs, which is the OPP costing of $526,000. Building permit costs of $54,000. Emergency measures of $18,000. Then there's amortization cost of $61,000 related to the fire department. Under transportation, that's the largest cost center for the township. You can see salaries were $478,000, materials of $402,000, contracts of $79,000. The largest amount of that was the amortization of $1,267,000. Environmental services, which is related to the would be the Ottawa Valley Waste Management, and also the collection of waste. There's wages of $36,000, materials of $29,000, the debenture payment of $42,271, and then contract payments of $75,000, and then amortization of just about $6,000. Health services, that's was budgeted amount for doctor recruitment. The amount was not invoiced, but the $15,000 was transferred to reserves to cover it in the future. And then under recreation, cultural, and services, you can see there's library cost was largest at $80,000, recreation of just about $60,600, and then amortization of $5,870. And then there's a minor amount under planning and development of $76,000, or sorry, $76. So total expenses of the township were $4,486,000. So the township had a excess revenue over expenses of the $63,500. Of that excess revenue over expenses, $71,000 was transferred to reserves, and then the equity and TCAs, it was a transfer back to net out the amortization and additions. So net transfers was also the $63,514,000. So the township ended up with a nil change in general surplus at year end overall.
You're doing a great job, Rory. I don't see any questions from council.
All right. Well, maybe just move ahead one more page to page 16. This is the consolidated statement of tangible capital assets. I just want to go over this briefly to say the highlights of the additions that were done during the year. The capital additions, there was an extraction $66,000, a fire hall reno of just about $83,000, additions to, or work done to Black Creek Road of $127,000, Grist Mill Road of $437,000, and Island View Drive of $158,000, and Royal Pine Road of $223,000. So those are the largest additions. We can see additions of 375, and then there's also our amortization of $1,388,000. We'll move ahead to page 18, if we can, please. This is a schedule of reserves and reserve funds. It does have the Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board reserve of $403,000, the balance for the townships. We can see there was contributions of $479,000 during the year. That was amounts transferred into reserves. And then there was transfers out to operations and also for the acquisition of tangible capital assets of almost $356,000. So the change in reserves was an increase of almost $123,500. And we started the year with our $3,948,000 ending balance of just over $4,071,000. If we remove the Ottawa Valley Waste Management Board's reserve, the township ended up with $3,668,000 in reserves. At the bottom, these are the areas that the council or the township has earmarked for the funds to be used in the future. Okay. If there's no questions on the reserves, I'll maybe get we could move back to page 5 of the financial statements. So this is the statement of cash flow that I mentioned earlier, and it just provides a bit of a breakdown of how cash was either used or produced within the township. We had our excess revenue over expenses of $167,000. That's the consolidated amount. We do add back amortization because that's a non-cash expense item. And then some of the other smaller non-cash items too, we add back. So cash flows from operating of were $1,403,000. We add back, majority of it was the amortization. Then there's the net change in non-cash working capital balances. This is just as these various accounts or groupings either increase or decrease, they can tie up cash. We can see how the taxes receivable by decreasing produced $186,000 for the township, and why it's important to manage taxes receivable. And then also accounts receivable decrease, which produced $83,000. And then the other item was the accounts payable by it increasing it just about $103,000. So cash flows, total cash flows from operations were $1,768,000 for the year. Cash flows from financing, there was the long-term debt repayment and also lien note repayment, which used just over $67,000. And then there is the additions to tangible capital assets. And we can see that the additions and the also acquisition of investments used $1,400,000, almost $6,000 in the increase in cash equivalents of $295,000 at year end. with our beginning balance of the almost 2.7 million resulted in our cash and cash equivalents of 2,972,000 we saw on the statement of financial position. The balance of the statements are the notes, and it just provides information on how the balance, what makes up the balances, and also the accounting policies we also use. That's kind of like why various items. Not sure if there's any notes anyone would like to go over or look at in more detail.
Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld, you had a question? You're muted though.
Okay, sorry. On page 7, what are linear assets? You may have talked about it, but I'm still confused.
That would be essentially they're roads. So that would include the base and also the surface. That's why there's a fairly large, I guess, amortization period.
Okay, all right. I did, and that makes perfect sense. I just couldn't understand why the year was so, like, there was such a big variance. And then I had, I guess that's it. Okay. Yeah, like
thank you. Technically a base should last you, and I'm sure they do last longer than the 40 years, but that was the, consensus of how long they last.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, thank you for answering that.
Any other questions from council?
No.
Anything else you wanted to add, Rory? I don't see any notes in regards to any of the accounting practices that we may want to look at changing or reviewing.
We didn't. We had some minor ones we went over direct with council. With staff. With the changeover, I think there'll be some process changes this year, just how Michelle likes to do things and then how Daniel likes to do things. But there were no, I guess I don't want to say material is not the right word, but major items of concern during the audit.
Thank you. Well, that's good news. And yes, we're looking forward to getting used to Michelle's way of doing things. So seeing no other questions or comments, I have a resolution that council accepts the financial report from Rory Richards of McKillian and Associates as presented. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move that.
Seconded by Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld. Councillor Burt?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Thank you very much. That's carried. And thank you, Rory, once again for taking the time to present that financial statement. And hopefully next year we'll be back in person and be a little bit simpler than all these Zoom meetings.
All right. Well, thank you, and I look forward to it.
Okay, so we will move on to item 7.1, which is recreational trailers, campers, and motorhomes. I have a resolution that council accepts the report on recreational trailers, campers, and motorhomes and directs the CAO to bring forward to council in August a bylaw and permits system to allow the placement of these units on approved private lands with a fee system that recovers admin costs and service delivery. And further, the bylaw will state that these units are not deemed to be primary residence. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Buchwald, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Comments, questions? Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld.
Just a couple of comments. We talked about the need for seasonal dwellings, but then in the report, it's just saying really it's a 3-season issue. And then I'm truly not aware of a lot of private property where there's additional like trailers and motorhomes where people are living in. And the concern about sewage disposal, to me, that would be a greater concern once we do have more trailers. I'm just thinking the can of worms that happened when BV opened this up like clear. And anyway, I'm thinking that when we do have a bylaw, it's got to be very sensitive to all that stuff. So like to me, if we're having a bylaw and it's to help people that are having problems now finding residents because of COVID and the high cost of property and the unavailability of properties, I'm not sure how this would actually help them out because a person has to live 365 days of the year. And personally, we have like 3 lakes in our area and a couple of rivers. I'm very concerned about having trailers on those properties simply by the impact they'll have on the water itself, whether it's just more people on the water because now there's going to be more people around the lake front, or if there's going to be potential pollution due to the increased number of people, along with the possible septic issues. That's it.
Thank you for those comments. Councillor Robinson, you did have your hand up, I think.
Yes, I did. I guess the question that I have is the comment that I have is looking at, because the ones that are popping up on Point Church, they're varying sizes. And how do you define what would be a relative cost for that? I do have an issue that we're almost, I'm very nervous about us digging ourselves in the same hole that BV sort of had. But I also feel that the connection from BV to NAW because of all of those issues, and that concerns me.
Councillor Byrne.
I have the same feeling Maria has. Like, are we going too far with this bylaw? Do we actually need this bylaw at this time? Because BV dug himself a big hole, and it doesn't really. I know there might be some popping up at on Church Point Drive, but I don't think there's very many in our township that we have to worry about this right now. Thank you.
Councillor Buchwald.
I hear what the other councillors are saying, and for the most part, I agree that it's not really a problem right now. But if we are starting to see some of these pop up, I would much rather see us develop a bylaw and develop a policy to put some guidance towards it so that we don't wind up down the road in 5 or 10 years with the issues that Bow Valley now has had because they haven't had something suitable. So I think now would be the time before we're rushing for something that we can have staff do some investigation, develop a reasonable policy for us to consider, and then we can incorporate that into a bylaw that, again, has provisions to protect the environment, has provisions to allow for reasonable access to these properties for people to have trailers on them, but to have some guidelines or some, I don't want to use the word control, but some limitations and some better ways of making sure that things are done in a proper manner, especially when you are dealing with things like septic, you are dealing with things like improper setbacks. So, how if they're putting a trailer on the property but they don't have septic, are they pulling that trailer out to dump it, or are they just dumping it on site into the water? So I think we do need to have some sort of structure there. And again, this gives us some time to look at it without having to do a knee-jerk reaction, jump into it. So I just think it's probably a good thing to look at, and we can always see what staff develops and have our own input into it, so that we have something that that works and hopefully satisfies the majority of people.
Councillor Robinson, you had a follow-up?
No, I was just very much agreeing with what Councillor Buchwald is saying. Like, I don't believe that we shouldn't have something. We have to be very cautious about how we proceed with it. I've had comments from residents on Point Church in relating to this that are expressing the concern, because within the last year, we've had probably about, well, way more than I would have expected. Like 3 were there, and the next 2 months, there were another 3 more further down the road. So I definitely agree that we need to have something in place, because it seems to be becoming a trend, and we need to be aware of it. That's all. But thanks, Councillor Buchwald, for those points.
Councillor Burns.
Just go back to Maria's point there. She said there were 3 of them on Church Point Drive, and now there's 6 of them. Are they just season, or are they year-round, turned into year-round residents?
That I don't know, but once the structure is up, it's not going to be pulled down. So, and it becomes a permanent structure when you've put an awning on top of a trailer, or you've built a full structure, which is what has happened in a number of areas.
Okay, I know what you mean now. Thank you.
Thank you, and I would agree the challenge we have in our municipality, and I think this is why some of the residents are voicing their concerns. If you put a trailer, park a trailer on your property, and it's there for a couple of weeks, that person or family is using it basically as a temporary vacation spot. But as soon as they build a deck and they maybe put an awning or build a permanent roof over it, it does become a permanent structure. And right now we're not collecting taxes on those structures because we don't have the bylaw in place that would allow us to do it. And this is part of the challenge as well. If it's got a deck, if it's got a roof, then the question is, it isn't movable to dump sewage. So where is it going? Is it being tied back into the house? If that's happening, the house was probably approved based on a certain capacity and number of residents. If you add 2 or 3 trailers, now you're exceeding that capacity. And the same for hydro. Are people running a permanent hydro line over to these trailers? So I do think we need a bylaw to guide us as we move forward before it becomes a bigger issue than it currently is.
Mm-hmm.
Councillor Ranke-Schoenfeld.
I think the report is nearly too complex for like the bylaw that we're going to need. Like, I mean, simply, if I lived around any lake, I wouldn't want any permanent structure on lakefront property. The house is there, that's one thing, but nothing else, simply because we're increasing the usage. That means we're increasing the people on the lake, and then we're increasing the possible sewage. So, I mean, and then what are we going to say? It's okay if you have 50 acres in the middle of nowhere and you have a house on it, we'll allow 3 trailers on that, but on lakefront we won't. Like, I mean, it's nearly like, I'd rather nearly have like an environmental officer go around and check out those structures. Like, my concern, and I was still kind of confused, is it lakefront property and people have put a trailer on it? Or is it lakefront property that has a house and now there's additional trailers on that properties? Because to me, if I own lakefront property and I don't have a house on it, I really don't see the problem with having a trailer on it. But I do see the problem if I've got lakefront property with a house and now I've just invited 3 other trailers in, and that to me is a real problem.
Thank you for that. Any further comments, Councillor Buchwald?
And hearing what Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld is saying, and that's the type of thing that we can address in the report and in the policy and in the bylaw. Again, it's one of those things. It's nice to be able to be starting it now before we're trying to fix a whole lot of properties that may be a problem. So if we can get something in place before it becomes a problem, it's a whole lot easier to deal with something when there's 2 or 3 or 10 as opposed to 20 or 30 or 50 that may happen down the road. So I think the timing is right, and I think it's we need to move forward with doing the research and having something brought back to us for consideration.
Thank you for that. Councillor Berndt?
If they have a trailer on a lot and they put a roof over and they put a big deck outside, we still don't tax them on that building. That is a permanent building? Or do you already tax on that building?
That's the issue.
At this point, I don't believe they are taxed. I'll ask staff if they can confirm that, but I think that is, as Councillor Robinson said, that is the issue. Andrew, do you
so unless a building permit was issued for the structure, it's not recorded anywhere, and the impact does not add that to the assessment of the property.
Okay.
Okay, so sorry.
I do agree with it in a way, but we really have to be careful the way everything is worded. It is a can of worms, and we really have to watch ourselves. We don't end up the same place where BV ended up with their bylaw for Lake Clear. I don't want to see that happen.
And basically, this resolution is just directing staff to bring back a bylaw and a permit system. So we will have a chance to review it and discuss it, and it gives us an opportunity and gives staff they've heard some of our comments, so it gives staff a chance to put that information together. Councillor Robinson.
Just one comment. Just one last comment. I guess we need to look at what the guidelines within the province is saying, because I think there is a guideline that says anything over 100 square feet or something to that effect. So maybe and I'm sure when staff is considering this, they will also look at what some of the guidelines on a provincial level is.
Absolutely, because we do have to, we also have to follow the county official plan.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that was it. Thank you.
So I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I mean, yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.2 is the summer office hours. I have a resolution that the council accepts the summer hours and council meetings report as presented and cancels regular meetings of council for July and August in 2021 and 2022, and further closes the township office on Wednesdays for July and August in 2021 and 2022. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Robinson. Seconded by Councillor Buchwald. Comments? Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld.
It seems like every year we come to this possible having no meetings, council meetings in July and August. And I really think we got paid by, we indirectly got voted for, and indirectly people's monies goes towards our salaries. I really don't feel comfortable in not having meetings, having reduced meetings. one thing. And of course, if we have emergency meetings, of course, attending that, but just having no meetings in July and August, I don't think are good optics. Similarly, I don't think closing the office one day a week is good optics either. We haven't reduced the people in our office. And I think it's important that we're there for the people when the people need us to be there.
Councillor Burke.
I have to agree with Councillor Wright Schoenfeld, because we got voted in for the people. We're working by the people. And if we're not going to have no meetings in July and August, unless it's an emergency meeting, council should either take a cut in pay or get no pay at all for them 2 months. To get paid and not have any meetings is not right. And closing the office on Wednesday, all I see it as another service is taken away from our residents. And every time you turn around, we raised taxes 9% in the last 2 years. Now you want to take another day away from our residents for the summer. I disagree with it 100%.
Councillor Robinson?
What I would suggest is that we do reduced hours, but we should always be available in those periods. Like I think in the past, what we have done is refer to summer hours. And I understand the comment that was made is that there's a lot of projects because of COVID, and staff had to redirect their efforts elsewhere. We're now playing catch up, but we've got summer students coming on, and we've got a bunch of other things. So we really need to be very cautious about the optics of just doing this.
Councillor Buckwell.
As far as whether or not we meet in July and August, traditionally we've reduced the meetings. If the workload isn't there, if there's not things that council needs to deal with, we're spending more staff time on having them come in for these meetings in the evenings, or doing flex hours, or covering extra time. So I don't have an issue with reducing meetings. If there is something that has to be done, we could do that. As far as closing the office during the day, I've given that some thought, but what I'm thinking, what might be a better option is, again, as has been mentioned, is we do have the summer students available. Would it maybe instead be appropriate that, say, on Wednesday or one day a week, one member of the staff that's normally in the office answering the phones, doing regular work, basically locks the door to their office or the cubicle or moves into another room and works only on those additional projects that they're missing. So whether that's one day a week or whether it's one day a week for each of the staff in the office, depending on what they're working on, maybe that's just a workload issue that we could modify as opposed to closing the office, in the alternative to actually closing the office. I'd really be interested in hearing the clerk and the CAO's position on this for the rationale for the closure, as opposed to, again, just redeploying work to cover it.
Well, I would just add that I know for the month of July, the county does not hold any meetings. And part of the reason is as well, a lot of staff take vacation. A lot of the councillors want to take vacation. So it allows everybody to have that little pause so you can take advantage of that time. And the rest of the staff have enough project assignments, etc., that they certainly are busy. And when you're preparing every second week for a council meeting, yes, it does involve a lot of work. And that's work that's time, I should say, that staff could be focusing on more specific projects. I do agree with Councillor Buckwell that maybe it's not a bad idea to have one person just dedicated to phones and so on a Wednesday, but that the other staff has that time to work on some of the other projects. And that gives them an opportunity put more focus and attention to projects. So, I mean, just that's my thoughts, my comments. Do we cancel meetings for July and August, or do we just cancel meetings for July? I think that's something that we could take a look at. Councillor Robinson.
I think last year we had one meeting each. What if we have one in the beginning of July and one at the end of August? That would still accomplish the same thing.
That certainly would. And Councillor Burt?
I agree with Councillor Robbins. That's what I was going to mention, that same thing. The 1st of July and the 3rd week in August. Because we don't know what comes up.
Okay, well, could I suggest then that we table this resolution and staff can make that adjustment and bring it back to the next meeting? Absolutely. Or do you want to make the change right now and we'll have to write out a new resolution?
Why don't we table it and let staff debate the logistics?
So would council agree to table this till the next meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
okay.
Fine.
Okay, that's what we'll do. It's then tabled. Thank you. Item 7.3 is the Christmas office hours. That council accepts, the resolution reads that council accepts the report on Christmas break and that the township office be closed from 12 p.m. noon on December 24th and reopen on the 29th. And further, the township office will close at noon on the 31st of December and reopen on the 4th of January 2022. Can I get a mover and a seconder for this resolution? Moved by Councillor Buckwell, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Comments on this one? Councillor Buckwell?
I think that calendar is pretty much in keeping with the statutory holidays. So I don't see that there's a whole lot of debate on that, unless we want to pay the staff to come in on stats. But nothing else is going to be open those days.
Any other comments? I see none, so I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwell?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld?
Yes.
Yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 7.4 is a tree removal request. I have a resolution that council permits Mr. and Mrs. O'Neill to remove trees and debris along the route described in their letter of request on the conditions that, number one, the neighbors abutting the road allowance where the cutting is taking place provides a letter indicating no objection to the proposed cutting. Number two, the township be notified prior to work commencing and at the completion of work. Number three, that the cutting be done in a conscientious, safe manner with the O'Neills assuming all liability for any damage caused during the operation. Number four, that all timber and debris be removed at the O'Neills' expense. Number five, that there be no expectation of perpetual care of the cleared route by the township. And number six, that the O'Neills provide a deposit of $500 to the township before the commencement of work that will be returned to the O'Neills after a satisfactory inspection of the work by township staff. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Recchi Schoenfeld, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Comments? Questions? Councillor Burnt, you had a question?
The one comment there, he is cutting that wood on the township right away. and he's going to take the wood and all that stuff?
I would have to ask staff to answer that. Andrew?
That is correct. That's what the resolution states, that he's to remove everything.
Okay, just none of the other residents can say that he took the wood from the township property if he cuts it, and that's that's the only thing I was concerned about. There's not very much there. I drove through there today.
Yeah, I don't know if there's much there of any value.
There's not really, no.
Any other comments? Mr. Buckwell, we don't see you anymore. Are you still there? Oh, you're muted, Councillor Buckwell.
Yeah, sorry, I was scrolling through my agenda and I hit my stop video button.
Okay, thank you. So I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwell?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I mean, yes, it's carried. Thank you. So item number 9 is correspondence, action and non-action. I have a resolution that council accepts the non-action communication items as information. And that's under 9.1. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld. I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
I have a comment. With that sustain, would the Ottawa Valley Waste Recovery have been sent that publication or presentation? Do you know?
The direction when we received the report at County Council, and the warden asked specifically if they would share it with Upper Ottawa Valley Waste Centre. So I believe that will happen.
Okay, perfect. And secondly, so I noticed the Lake Erie Property Owners Association newsletter was there. Is there any way that I could direct our president or someone to ask if on Facebook we could highlight the triathlon and the Canada Day flotilla and the photo contest at all? Do we do that on our Facebook at all?
I'm sure that's a request that you could make to staff, and they could look after that for you. Okay,
I'll make that request to 2 people. Thank you.
So I'll call the vote. Thanks. I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwell?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I mean, yes, it's carried. Thank you. Item 9.2.1 is the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program. I have a resolution that council directs staff to apply for the Zero Emission Vehicle Infrastructure Program when the next intake of the program is announced. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Robinson, seconded by Councillor Burnt. Comments or questions? I see none. I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. That's carried. Thank you. Item 9.2.2 is the change order for the Boncher River Waste Management Plan. I have a resolution that council accepts the requested change to the Boncher River Water Management Plan as information and for review. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Buckwald, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Comments or questions? Councillor Buchwald, and then Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld.
The only comment I would make is, having read through that, it took a lot of effort to bring in the drawdown changes and that sort of thing that happened recently. And this to me looks like a request to bring the levels back up. Again, this individual's report is referring that, 4 inches isn't going to hurt anything here and it's not going to hurt anything there, but it doesn't give any information on what it's going to do to other properties. So my suggestion for this is we accept it as information and review, but it's not something that I'd be in favor of supporting for action beyond that.
Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld.
The one thing I agree with Councillor Buchwald, because like when we do one thing, there's consequences somewhere else, and that always happens. But when he talked about at the end where it says, my final request is that the intentional drawdown should be delayed until the official end of summer. To me, I don't really necessarily have a problem with that, because that's when people tend to bring their boats out and stuff like that. And I think that's a concern they have too. By delaying it to the end of summer, I really don't think that's going to negatively affect anyone, but it could be a good idea for people that are trying to get their boats out. That's the only, when I read the report, that was the only positive thing that I would have agreed with.
Councillor Buchwald, follow up. Well, you're muted. You're muted, Councillor Buchwald.
I got to quit talking so much. I understand what Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld is saying. The problem is if you do a plan like this, and because Round Lake only drains at a certain speed, if you don't start it soon enough, if the water is too high, you don't get ahead of the curve. And I think that was one of the reasons why they started the drawdown so much sooner, so that it would have time to draw down before it started getting the fall rains and things like that to bring it up. Again, I understand what the gentleman is saying, because for years it was fine, it wasn't an issue. But now after a couple high water events, there's been action taken to change it. So somebody's going to be unhappy if the water's too low. Somebody's going to be unhappy if the water is too high. My default position is which one isn't going to cause harm, as opposed to a little bit of enjoyment. So maybe you have to be a little bit more careful with your boat. Okay, to me that's still better than having to go and start pumping out your basements or pulling stuff off the shores.
And I would say, just to follow up on Councillor Buchwald's comment, I do agree we could accept this as information, but I don't believe there's enough detail there. I'm thinking maybe the comment that they would wait until the end of summer to start the drawdown, and the reasoning that they would look at maybe increasing that drawdown level by 4 inches is that, just as you were saying, because of the time it takes to get the water level down, they may never get to the target that they first looked at unless they start drawing down earlier. So it could be a balancing act that they're trying to achieve, but there's not detail there to determine that. Councillor Rankin-Schoenfeld.
When does the drawdown normally begin then?
Well, they just, as of last year, they got approval from the ministry to start the drawdown. I believe they start at the beginning of October. And before that, they would wait because they didn't have the approval to draw it down to a lower level. So there was no need to start any earlier. But now, in order to get it to the target, they have to start drawing down earlier.
And so when is earlier? You said that not October though, right? It's earlier than October.
Yeah, and there's not enough detail there. So I'm not sure myself what date they would actually be starting.
Because I mean, are they drawing down? Like, to me, the end of September, the end of summer to me is the end of September, right? So like, are they drawing down currently now at the end of July, or is it the end of August? Like that's like, well, and like you said, there's not enough detail in the report to do anything with it. But that's a question I would have, is now currently, when are they starting the drawdown? And
that's certainly a question I think we could pass on to Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards, because they're the ones that have been leading this project. So we could certainly ask staff if they could get us a little more information on some of those details. So I'll call it, because the resolution right now just reads as accepting this as information for review. So I'll call for the vote. Councillor Burnt?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 9.2.3 is the Children's Social Services. I have a resolution that reads, whereas the Council of the Township of North Algona Wilberforce, having received correspondence from the Children's Social Services of Renfrew County, requesting the Ontario government bring more focus towards prioritizing the plan for students and teachers to safely return to their classrooms in the fall. Be it further resolved that the Township of North Algona Wilberforce supports their correspondence, and that a copy of this resolution be sent to the Honourable Doug Ford, Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Steve Lachey, Minister of Education, and MPP John Yakubuski. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld, seconded by Councillor Burt. Comments or questions? I see none, so I'll call the vote. Councillor Burt?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item number 10 is bylaws. I have a resolution. Now, therefore, the Council of North Algona Wilberforce enact the following bylaw. Bylaw 2021-30, being a bylaw to prescribe a speed limit for motor vehicles on a highway portion of the municipality. And bylaw 2021-31, being a bylaw to adopt the estimates of all sums required for municipal purposes during the year and set the 2021 tax rates. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Buchwald, seconded by Councillor Burnt. Comments? Questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Councillor Burnt?
Yes.
Councillor Buchwald?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. Item 11 is matters of urgency. Are there any matters of urgency? Are there any notices of motion? Committee reports, we have none. Upcoming meetings and unfinished business. So item 14.1 is the OPP police boards. I have a resolution that council accepts the OPP police board correspondence from Staff Sergeant DiCiviero as information. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Buchwald, seconded by Councillor Reike-Schoenfeld. And I will just, for council's information, I had quite a lengthy discussion with the staff sergeant, and he assured me that the communication will certainly, that will happen between our Killaloe OPP Police Service Board and the Upper Ottawa Valley Police Service Board. He said that Killaloe, Renfrew, and Upper Ottawa Valley already work very, very closely together. They do already share a lot of information, and he would be our spokesperson, he said, from our police service board meetings in Killaloe. to take any information or bring any information back from Upper Ottawa Valley to our police service board. And in fact, he did say that the province is gathering information to look at reviewing some of the boundaries that currently exist and to see if it would make any, if there would be any advantages or make any sense to change some of the boundaries so that we could be serviced by one detachment. But that could be a much lengthier process, but certainly something that they're giving consideration to. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwalt?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Regie-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes, that's carried. Thank you. So that brings us to 14.2, which is our closed session. I have a resolution. The council go into closed session for 3 personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees. 1 item regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, and 1 that is advice that is subject of solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So council would go into closed session at 8:24 p.m. Could I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Robinson. I'll call the vote. Councillor Burns?
Yes.
Councillor Buckwalt?
Yes.
Councillor Robinson?
Yes.
Councillor Regie-Schoenfeld?
Yes.
I'm a yes. That's carried. I will just wait until Laura gives us the clear that we are now in closed